Welcome to Act on Mental Health, where we're learning acceptance and commitment therapy and how to improve life mindfully using ACT. I also want to welcome you back if you're joining us for Act for Anger series. I'm Sean, and today we're going to be taking a further look into complexities of anger, the problem with control, and explore alternative strategies to manage it effectively. If you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our weekly content. Also, visit my website, seanhardy.com, for more resources and free downloadable content to support your journey. Scott Fitzgerald once wrote, "One should be able to see things as hopeless and yet be determined to make them otherwise." Now, if you've been struggling with anger for a long time, you may have a little bit of hopelessness about your situation, thinking, anger is just who I am. I can't see it otherwise. And so I want to encourage you that you can both see it as hopeless, that you're not really sure how it can change, and yet be determined to make it otherwise. Try to do what you can to make that change. Let's begin by exploring the cost and payoffs of anger. Anger can provide short-term benefits, but it often comes with significant long-term costs. So let's look first at the payoffs. If anger didn't work, I doubt we would use it so much. The reality is that sometimes anger has payoffs. Some anger behaviors, in fact, have positive effects. When we discharge anger, we can act out and we can reduce the short-term stress and make us feel less worried, frustrated, and in physical pain. We can also hide emotional pain. When we use anger, we can mask those pre-anger feelings, which can be uncomfortable to mention. We also get a lot of attention. People often listen when we're angry. We can also punish or act in revenge. These can feel satisfying in the short term. And finally, we can influence others. In chaotic families, anger can be used to get what we want, to assert what we want. Despite these benefits, anger has significant costs. It has interpersonal costs. Anger damages relationships with family, friends, and colleagues. It has career costs. Anger brings conflicts at work that affect performance and opportunities within that company. It has health costs. Anger is linked to issues with hypertension, heart disease, and substance use. It has energy costs. Anger is draining and leaves us exhausted. It has emotional costs. Anger can lead to loneliness and decreased social support. Go ahead and download the Cost of Anger Behavior Log from my website to track how anger affects you personally. Consider how anger behaviors have impacted your life. Now let's discuss why trying to control anger can be problematic itself. Many of us use control strategies to make anger feelings go away, but these often leave us with unresolved anger and underlying emotions. Control strategies work temporarily, keeping painful feelings at bay, but in the long run, you're left with the same anger. Fortunately, there is another option, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Now, externally, we solve problems by finding the cause and eliminating it. If you're hungry, you eat. If you dislike something, you avoid it. However, do these strategies work for internal experiences, like thoughts and feelings? If you dislike what you're thinking, can you get rid of it? If you dislike how you're feeling, can you walk away from it? Stephen Hayes has a way of saying this, that the more that you don't want something, the more you have it. Now, if you don't believe me, that's okay. You're not going to be convinced just with me talking. So I want you to try these exercises and hopefully you'll see what I mean. The first is a numbers exercise. I want you to commit these 3 numbers to memory. 1, 2, 3. So go ahead and memorize those. 1, 2, 3. Now, if I fast forward maybe a year from now and I ask you that question, chances are you'd be able to tell me what those 3 numbers are. Even if you couldn't remember our conversation or even what my face looked like, you'd be able to recall 1, 2, 3. All right, now I want you to forget them, okay? Go ahead and forget them. Do whatever you need to do to forget them. So if you're struggling to do this, try memorizing 4, 5, 6. And I want you to repeat that. 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6. Now this demonstrates the rule. Once it's in, it's in. And even if you don't want it, you've got it. You could try to replace it with other numbers, but chances are you're just going to remember both sets of numbers. The second exercise is the chocolate cake one. Now, for 30 seconds, I want you to try to not think about a warm, delicious chocolate cake. I want you to go ahead right now, just where you are, close your eyes, and don't try to think of a warm, delicious chocolate cake. All right, were you successful? Now, notice how our minds are tricky and how this applies to suppressing angry thoughts. Even if we try not to think of a chocolate cake, the very fact that we tell ourselves don't think of a chocolate cake means that we're thinking of a chocolate cake. Now let's try this with a couple feelings exercises. The first, I want you to imagine that you're sitting on a dunk tank platform, and down below is a tank full of hungry sharks. Now you're hooked up to a polygraph machine, and any anxiety that you feel will plunge you down below into that tank of hungry sharks. Could you do that? What if I paid you $1 million? Could you force yourself to not have any feelings of anxiety? All right, let's try this with positive emotions, because even positive emotions can be hard to control. If I offered you $10 million to fall in love with the person that you see next, could you do it? Could you do it on command? If you knew you had $10 million coming your way and the next person that you saw, you'd have to fall in love with them. Now, maybe you could do it for $10 million. Maybe you couldn't. Chances are, it depends on the person that you see next. The point is that controlling emotions is challenging, and struggling with our thoughts and emotions adds suffering on top of everyday pain. Now, that may seem hopeless. Like, if I can't control my anger, what can I do? Well, remember, we can still hold both true. We can be hopeless on one end, and we can also act in ways to make our lives better. Now, you do have control. You can control your actions, like how your body moves, your words that you say, how you respond to the world. This is our response ability, and it empowers you to focus on handling your emotions and interactions positively, the way that you want. Or in other words, what's most meaningful to you. Now, I want you to go ahead and complete the cost of anger's behavior log to reflect on the impact of anger and control strategies in your life. Now let's explore how our minds contribute to the creation and intensification of anger. Our minds are powerful tools designed to evaluate everything around us and keep us safe. However, these evaluative habits can also lead to unnecessary pain and more anger. Our minds assess situations as pleasurable, painful, good, or bad. This evaluation happens quickly, often without us even noticing. While this ability keeps us safe, it can also create problems when our mind manufactures pain that isn't necessary. We often think that events cause our emotions, but our powerful minds add a layer of interpretation. The same event can lead us to different emotions depending on our beliefs. For example, imagine someone doesn't respond to your message. One person might feel ignored and hurt, while another might think that the person is busy and feel fine. Our beliefs bridge the gap between events and feelings. Certain thoughts tend to trigger anger, often with a pattern: feeling harmed, victimized, and believing the other person is wrong. Common anger trigger themes include that people ignore your needs, that people are inconsiderate or impolite, that people are selfish or thoughtless, that people are unfair or unjust. So let's look at how thoughts create or intensify anger. So we see three things here: that first we judge, then we look for cause and effect, and then we label. Now our mind does this very quickly. So first our mind judges. Our mind judges others as right or wrong. This turns our preferences into rigid rules, like with words like should and ought to. With unchecked judgment, we compare reality to unrealistic standards that we have, leading to more frustration and more anger. This is the way it ought to be. Second is cause and effect. Our minds seek to understand cause and effect, often assuming others' intentions. This mind reading leads to misunderstandings and blaming others for our pain. Blame doesn't undo the past or fix the pain, but it keeps us stuck. And then label. We give toxic and global labels. Our mind categorizes people and situations, often negatively. These global labels justify our anger and resentment affecting communication and relationship. And this all happens really fast, and our mind's really good at it. And again, our mind is trying to keep us safe. Now that we've explored how the mind creates anger, you might think, I get it now. The way to avoid anger is to stop having trigger thoughts. But if you remember how our previous examples worked, you'll know it's very hard to stop or change our thoughts. Instead, we're going to look at ways to disengage from what our minds do automatically. In ACT, we call this diffusion. Rather than fusing with or getting stuck to our thoughts, we step back. Thoughts are simply creations of our minds. We don't need to treat them as reality. There are several ways to diffuse from our thoughts. First, I want you to think of thoughts like spam emails, particularly phishing emails, designed to provoke an emotional response. Just as a phisher tricks you into giving away personal information, your mind can trick you into reacting to thoughts, emotions, memories, or bodily sensations. But like spam emails, you don't have to respond to your internal experiences. Slow down, step back, and notice where responding will take you. Recognize when your mind throws these thoughts at you, just as you spot spam emails. Are they all or none? Negative? Provocative? Urgent? Remember that the mind is not you. The mind is a tool that isn't always helpful. Another way we can diffuse from thoughts is to say our thoughts aloud. Sometimes when we say the same thing over and over, it loses its meaning. So let's try this now. I want you to say the word anger over and over as fast as you can for about 15 to 30 seconds. So you can pause the video and try this out, and I want you to see what your experience is like saying anger over and over, 15 to 30 seconds. Did anyone lose the meaning for the word anger? Did it start to sound like nonsense? Doing this with stuck thoughts can be helpful. Feel free to add a funny voice when trying this. Another way that we can diffuse from thoughts is to categorize our thoughts. So instead of getting caught up in what you're thinking, try to step back and observe what your mind is up to. Look at each thought and categorize it as worry, judgment, planning, reminiscing. And whenever you feel upset, ask yourself, what is my mind up to? And find the right label. Say to yourself, now my mind is having a worry thought. Or now my mind is having a judgment thought, and so forth. Similar to categorizing, you can learn to label your thoughts. So try to describe your thoughts as something that your mind is producing rather than something that you are or that you do. For example, I'm having the thought that there's dishes to do. Take it a step further. I'm noticing that I'm having the thought that there's dishes to do. You could try to do this with feelings, memories, bodily sensations, and emotions too. Another way you can diffuse from your thoughts is to try to treat your mind as a separate person. Notice first that your mind doesn't always agree with you. It kind of has its own processes it's going through. So you could try to give your mind a name and take its opinion into account, like you would a friend. What does Susie have to say about this? Or you could just simply say mind. What does mind have to say about this? The last way that I'll show you to diffuse from your thoughts is mindful observation of thoughts. Now there's lots of guided exercises out there, as well as I have some on my channel that you can see. But these teach you to visualize your thoughts. So you can do that as people in a parade and you're sitting up on a bridge watching the parade go by. Or you can see your thoughts as leaves on a stream and you're on the shore watching your thoughts go by. Or you can see your words as clouds in the sky and you're watching the clouds go by and seeing your thoughts on the clouds. You can really think of anything and utilize this mindful observation of thoughts. What this will do is kind of show you that you're having these two experiences. You are the observer as well as seeing the contents of your thoughts. These diffusion techniques help us to create distance from our thoughts, allowing us to respond rather than react. Practicing these techniques and noticing how they change your relationship to your thoughts and emotions is really important to any sort of management of anger. Now, thank you for joining me today. I hope you found these insights and exercises helpful as you navigate your journey with anger. You can visit my website, SeanHardy.com, for more resources, and stay tuned for our next episode where we'll explore acceptance and willingness as alternatives to control. Remember, your journey towards a more purposeful and mindful life begins with a single click.